Hi everyone, it's Rachel and Anthony.
Hello.
From Don't Crop Me Now. We've had a really busy weekend here on our plots, so we'd like to share with you the jobs that we've been completing at the end of July, beginning of August. Today we have just taken out all of our new potatoes. So if Anthony just turns around, you can see how we manage storage of potatoes so we can use them over the season. So what we have done is we have chopped the tops off the potato haulms and we will leave them like that for about 2 weeks to harden off. So I'll just leave those ones initially on that table, I think. This has freed up this bed and we are going to plant some autumn cauliflowers in here. So these larger ones that have been a little bit attacked by slugs are a Mesco cauliflower, which is a green pointed cauliflower, and the smaller plants over there are autumn, ironically called giant, so autumn giant cauliflower. So hopefully we should get these cropping by sort of November-ish. Our autumn and winter brassicas have been sitting in this cold frame for the last few weeks. I bought these in as bare roots plants that have been field grown from a brilliant company called CornishCabbagePlants.com. So you can see they look pretty healthy in here. The ones that we're planting today have definitely got a little bit of slug damage. What I will do is check the leaves over very carefully to make sure that there's no tiny caterpillars hiding away, because as you can see on our made up cold frame, there is the odd gap, for example around here, and those butterflies are very crafty. So it's not 100% tight this, because it's a bit rickety in what we put together. So in order to do this, I just look underneath the leaves and just make sure there's no evidence of caterpillars. They are often very small, so do look really carefully. That looks pretty clean. I've also pulled out any of the leaves that looks a bit slug munched on the bottom, and I will plant this in probably to about there to give it a really good strong root system. Because these are our autumn brassicas, I'm not going to be adding extra mulch from our no dig method at this time, because this has already had some on. So I just want to show you how we manage this. So this top layer here is the mulch that's been added over a number of years, about 1 inch a year. So what I do is scrape away where I've clearly got the mulch layer, and you can actually see where it starts to change, that we're down to, that is the soil layer really underneath. So what I will do then is make a hole. So all this I'm going to put back on top. That's why I've just got it out of the way. I'm only using these methods because these plants are really quite big and well established. If they weren't as big as this, they wouldn't need to go in as deep. So you can see I'm just taking a lump of that soil out really underneath. Then take the plant out of the pot. And you can see, even though these have only been here a couple of weeks and they were bare rooted, that they are rooting well into the compost in the pot. So we're going to put that right down. Put some of this soil layer back on. So there is going to be a bit of mixing of the soil in the top here, but I will re-mulch these once these cauliflowers are harvested anyway, so I'm not too worried. And I always firm these in quite well, because brassicas do like a nice firm base around their roots. So now I'm just putting the mulch layer back over the top.
So whilst Rachel is planting out the autumn giant cauliflower, I've just cleared the third of this bed, which was the banana shallots. So I've got some there, and I've had 2 tubs of those, one of which I've just put in the greenhouse to start drying, and then I'll move this one over. So we're at the chilli greenhouse, the hot house, because this greenhouse does get very, very hot. It's very open, not very much shade for it, so it's great for the chilies. It's also good for drying things. So you can see in here we've got the elephant garlic drying, we've got some regular garlic drying over there, and just here the banana shallots that I've just harvested. They shouldn't need to stay in here very long. Like I say, it does get to like 35-40 degrees in here quite frequently. So a few days in here and I think these will be ready to go home.
We put all the cauliflower plants in. The autumn giant cauliflowers, which are more like a normal white cauliflower, are obviously much smaller, so we didn't have to go as deep, so it was easier. I am just going to sprinkle some of these chicken manure pellets over the top, just to give them a little bit of a boost, because we're not adding any more compost for this crop. Now we'll just put a net over to prevent the pigeons gobbling all the brassicas, because they tend to do that where we live. Due to most of our summer brassicas being in, we've had to sort of see what we can find to build a structure with netting over the top of our new cauliflower bed. So as you can see, we use this blue piping, which is the main stuff we tend to use. We try to have a number of hoops the same size, but as you can see, that didn't quite work out from what we had left. So we've had to sort of higgledy-piggledy this together, but it has worked okay. It's pretty well covered. The best way we have found to secure the netting is to pull tight and just to use some small pieces of wood that are nailed in along the edges of the bed. It's very easy then just to get a claw hammer and just to pull them off if you need to weed or you need to pick your crops. Where Anthony just took out the banana shallots, we also had some overwintering onions in the other part of the bed that came out last weekend. So what I've done is put in some late leek plants under this netting, which has been attached in a similar way to the brassica netting, but at the two ends we've just used some bricks to weight it down because there was a little bit more material and it's easy to roll up that way. Another thing we're doing today is we're going to use these 30-litre tubs that we have been growing the early potatoes in. Once the potatoes have been cropped, we have just got the compost that is left over, and the plan is we are going to use this to sow some carrots. So I've got some small carrot seeds here. The sound you can hear is just where we've watered this pot and it's just draining through. So in order to get as many carrots as we can in this tub, I'm going to sow them in a spiral pattern. So I'm just using my finger to make a spiral shape. It is important to make sure you sow carrots really thinly because they don't do well if they're overcrowded. So I'll just put a few carrot seeds into my hand and thinly sow these around this spiral. And then I'll just cover those seeds up. I find this method a bit better than just sort of doing a broadcast, throwing them all in, because then they do end up very overcrowded. Make sure you firm down where you've planted the seeds, because the seeds need contact with the compost. And this is pretty moist anyway, so I'm not actually going to water this. And that's it. We'll put that into the polytunnel to get these going, and we'll keep these in the polytunnel and hopefully be harvesting these around Christmas. We are harvesting these shallots, which have done really well, and these are from our safe sets, so I'm really pleased with how good the crop has done this year. Once we have harvested these shallots, that's another space that we would try and fill, so some of those brassicas that are in the cold frame will come into this space. This is our salad bed, and we sowed extra lettuce, mixed spicy salad leaves and spring onions about 3 weeks ago. But where I have taken some spring onions out, we've got some gaps, and I have been sowing some more seeds of spring onions today. One of the important jobs we always do at this time of year is just to keep on top of the maintenance of all the stone fruits. So last weekend we pruned the plum trees, and we're just going to have a look at keeping on top of this cherry tree. So Anthony is just taking out the majority, just leaving on a tiny amount of the growth this year from the top, because we don't want this tree going too high.
We've pruned the cherry tree a little bit, so now we're just going to have a look at one of the pots of Anya potatoes to see what they're like. So Rachel's just trimming the haulms down, and I'll go in the compost in a minute, and then we'll take the tub over to the table and tip it out and do an Anya potato reveal. We've brought the Anya potato tub back over to the bench. Rachel has cleared out the chopped hemp from the top. We just didn't bother filming that, there was no point. There's all the chopped hemp, and we can see that we've got a good half a dozen Anya potatoes right on the surface. So they would have gone green if they hadn't have been protected by the hemp chopped bits. So let's tip that out into the barrow and see how we do.
Oh my word.
Decent one. I stopped recording the potatoes because there was loads of them. I went to look to see if we had the little scale to weigh how many we'd got. We have got the scale here, but there was no batteries. So we will skip ahead to the bucket of potatoes. There it is. We're just going to give those a wash now. Just filled the watering can.
So this isn't to fully clean the potatoes, it's just to stop us taking all the mud home. And if you are wanting to store these in a sack, I wouldn't recommend washing them before storage, because if there is any problems, like any, for example, there was a blighted potato in there, you'll spread it through the rest of the potatoes. But because we're going to just probably eat these over the next couple of weeks, give them a good wash. This is a lot here.
Is that all of them? Yep.
I'm just tipping it into here to make sure we haven't left any tiny ones. Which we have. If I can catch them on there. There it is. I knew I saw another one. There we go. So a glove for comparison for size.
This tub is the spent compost from the potatoes, so what we will do is we'll just leave that there. If we have another one, then we'll just stack it, and we just use that for mulching any beds over the winter. We've just come down to one of the brassica beds, which has got cauliflower and some cabbages in. We've just uncovered it to see what we've got. Well, we spotted these yesterday, to be honest, but we know we were going to take them back today, so let's have a look and Rachel can talk us through what's in here.
So at this end, we've got some of these really large Filderkraut type pointed cabbage that are for making sauerkraut really with. But you can see they're very big. They're only really just starting to fill out, so they will just stay in here. But then the rest of this bed is calabrese broccoli and purple cauliflower. And it has not been the best weather for these types of crops because they really need a lot of water. But we saw the other day that they're all filling out, and some of these, even these here, there's quite a big one here of the cauliflower. So we're going to cut these. Do remember, when you cut your main broccoli or cauliflower off, then you do get a few side stems that shoot out afterwards, so it's worth leaving them for a month or so after, rather than taking the entire plant out.
So we're back down at the little picnic table, and here are the broccolis and the one purple collie that we have picked today. The next job is to go and tie up all the raspberries because they are hanging over the path and are in the way.
So our autumn raspberries are growing on this frame. So there's just wires they're meant to be about a foot apart, but we've got a few extra ones we put in last winter. And the idea is you just take any of your raspberry canes. These are all new grown this year because they're autumn raspberries, so they get chopped down every year. And just with a bit of string, try and tie them in to the frame. So that's what we will do. We'll go along this whole structure on both sides and try and tie them in so they don't collapse over the path and cause access problems for both us and our allotment neighbour. So you can see how we have tied this section of raspberries up. When you're doing this, be careful you don't tie them all too tightly together, because you need good airflow around your plants to stop them getting mouldy on the fruits. And it gives you a good chance to have a weed underneath if there is any weeds that have appeared under your raspberry patch. As well, we've had some very small canes coming out at points further away than when I want to tie in, like these ones here. I've cut them off. So that's always a good job to keep on top of where your raspberries are spreading throughout the year. Further down on our raspberry patch, it's right next to one of our new asparagus beds, which is going absolutely brilliant at the moment, but it's really stopping me being able to get down that path. So what I didn't do early enough was put some canes in to support these asparagus ferns as they grow, because I honestly did not think they were going to be this big. We haven't really grown asparagus before. Now a lot of them have fallen over, they've sort of grown and adjusted in that position, so it's quite hard for me to put them back upwards. So I'm going to trim the ones that are on this edge of this path just so I can have access to the raspberries as well.
More or less stood in the same spot, and we can now see the full width of the path. Earlier we mentioned that we were going to take off the tops of the Anya potatoes probably later in the week. We changed our mind and we did that today, so that's done. There's the Anya potatoes, all with the tops chopped down, just like a couple of inches of the stalks showing, so they will just stay there for now. The skins of the potatoes will harden off and we'll just empty a tub as and when we need them. So I'm just going to walk down. You can just see Rachel on the other side there briefly, but I'll just walk down to the shallots where we removed the shallots from yesterday. Let's get through this tree. Ow. I've just cut some of our blue water pipe to big hoops, so 3 pieces of that, and we've got a 6x3 bed which had the shallots in. So those kale are going to go in there, and then we'll put the hoops in, and then we'll put some netting over to protect it from both the cabbage white and the pigeons. And that's the kale bed done. That's a 6 foot by 3 foot bed with 10 kale plants in.
A quick job that we did was just to check the fish pond, and there's a lot of this oxygen weed that's really taking over the bottom of the pond, so I pulled it out and put it on the side. That allows all the creepy crawlies to crawl back out and get back into the pond before I put that on the compost. As we've been taking all the crops out, I've been stacking them in our compost, so you can see that it's just about full. It's layered greens and browns, and that will need turning in a couple of weeks.
So there we go, it's been quite a busy weekend at the plot. The important thing to take away from what we've been up to this weekend is that even though you're taking your crops out, you can still be planting new things, and then you'll get some extra crops in the winter season. If you've enjoyed what you've seen over the last video, then please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Take care everyone, it's bye bye from Anthony.
And bye from Rachel.
Bye.